Staffing as a Cultural Foundation in a Law Firm with Andrew Wilcox, episode 302. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I have a wonderful treat today because one of the areas that I think is the most important growth area for a law firm is staffing their firm, is hiring people to do the work. If the law firm owner holds on to that work, if they are trying to do things themselves, they're going to be crippling the growth of their firm. The name of the game when running a business is to have more inventory to sell. And in a law firm, that inventory is your human capital. And the more inventory you have, the more money you can make, and ultimately, the better life you can lead. So we want to have conversations that revolve around getting the right people in the right place. And how do you then maximize that and grow it from there? And there's no better person to be talking to us about that than our guest today, who's Andrew Wilcox. Andrew Wilcox is the founder and owner of Wilcox and Hackett. And Wilcox and Hackett is a legal recruiting and consulting firm. So Andrew's he's got the goods, and we're going to have a conversation today to really try to pick his brain and figure out how we can help you in this process. So let me just tell you a little bit about Andrew. I already told you he's the founder and owner of Wilcox and Hackett, a legal recruiting and consulting firm. That consulting firm was awarded one of the top 100 businesses for Florida State University, where he graduated from the business school in 1996. When Andrew isn't helping place attorneys, he's enjoying some of his favorite activities, which include reading, researching, genealogy, volunteering at church and his community, hiking, and traveling. This love for travel took him and his family to all 50 state capitals, presidential libraries, and most parks around the country. So, those are all things that I would love to do and have not done. Andrew lives in Florida with his wife and daughters. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
It is really good to have you. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. So daughters, how many daughters you got?
I have 2 daughters, one at 18 and one 14.
Beautiful, beautiful. Those are rough ages, but beautiful, beautiful family. And I love girls. I've got 4 of them, and they are lovely. So I love having another family man, family woman here on the show. But let's talk about the subject matter at hand. Before we dive into specifics, details, you've got a lens on the industry that perhaps many people don't, and I certainly may not, from sitting in your role. What do you think the number one challenge today for law firms when it comes to staffing their firm is?
Well, specifically in the last couple of years has been trying to meet attorneys where they are, whether that's working remotely, working hybrid, trying to integrate people into an office, trying to create a culture within that firm that enables young associates to be mentored and to be brought along and to kind of create a place of being, I guess, for their career for the long term, but also creating a bit of a unique setting for lateral attorneys or for partners or groups for people to want to go and practice there. Most firms of a certain size sell the same thing, which is we got X amount of attorneys, we have X amount of offices, we're the number one on this list and that list and everything else. But I think most attorneys hear some variation of that, but that's not unique to them. And I think so for them to have a firm that is a firm that they could grow in, that they could be with for the long term, and to be part of a larger culture, part of a larger community, Frankly, I think that's where a lot of firms struggle, is trying to meet people where they are. As I said, with associates, and offering them an opportunity for them to grow in their careers and their practice, but also for attorneys who they may be partners somewhere else, and they're looking for something that really makes them enjoy waking up in the morning and going to work and practicing law, because they don't want to be siloed. They don't want to just work with other people and be a cog in the wheel. They went to law school for a reason. They want to practice law for a reason. And I think trying to find that match of a good platform for people to be able to work in.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you mentioned is, creating an environment where young attorneys can come in and get mentored and stuff like that. In your view, is that the best hiring process for somebody who's maybe a small size law firm, there's just a few attorneys? Should they be going for that young attorney, or should they be looking for somebody more experienced, pay a little bit more, and not have to worry about cultivating somebody and getting them trained up where they can kind of short circuit that process a little bit?
Well, for the smaller firms, it's become really a challenge. I've probably had 10 conversations over the last 2 weeks with attorneys at smaller firms that at some point in the conversation, they said, hey, we're looking for an associate, a corporate associate or litigation associate or this or that. And everybody, including the large law firms, are having difficulty finding quality candidates. And the issue, if you're a smaller firm, is those good candidates, and even what people would say are kind of average candidates, are getting thrown ridiculous sums of money at them by these large law firms. And because large law firms, it's not, used to be a few years ago, you had to graduate in the top 5% of your class, you had to be at the top law school and everything else. And even some of them have had to compromise on some of that just to be able to have warm bodies to be able to do the work, because they've been so busy. The tough thing about that is, if you're a small firm, is you have to decide how much you want to pay associates, because a large law firm can come in and outbid you. So you really have a couple of ways to keep your people. Is there has to be that chasm between, okay, I may not be getting paid as much as I would be at a AM law firm or some large law firm that's in the area. What I'm doing here is important. I'm working with really good people. That pain of leaving some money on the table and going to more money and a larger firm and all that, I have to be able to bridge that gap somehow. And for small law firms, right, that's really challenging. The biggest thing that they have to sell to younger associates is that collegial atmosphere and really just enjoying the people that you work with. And it's tough to overcome that when you're talking about, in some cases, double the salary. Right. But if it's $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, if a law firm can make that up in some way, or has some other levers that they could pull, whether that's leadership or mentoring or the ability to see a courtroom, whereas a lot of these larger firms, they may be coming in and doing a lot of research and some of those things, but they may not be able to try cases. They could do that at some smaller firms. And so there are some unique things that these smaller law firms can offer. But if a large law firm wants to come in and throw a lot of money at them, that's just an uphill battle.
Right. So what is the thing that a law firm should be focusing on when they're going out to the marketplace and they're going to hire somebody? Like, should they be focusing on the experience level? Should they be focusing on the personality? Should they be focusing on a fit? I mean, you mentioned the culture of the firm. Should they be looking for somebody who fits that culture? Like, where should the focus be in the search of putting the next person in?
Well, I think for smaller firms, one of the things I enjoy working with smaller firms, because they spend a lot more time in the interviewing process, in my experience, not all the time, but most of the time, because at a large law firm, let's face it, if you get somebody who is not that great to work with, they may be a really good attorney, but they're just personality-wise, culturally, they're just not that great of a person to work with, but they're a talented attorney. At a large law firm, they could be kind of tucked away somewhere, isolated, I guess, from other folks, and either they will leave on their own or they'll find that isolation and be able to work perfectly fine within that isolation. Smaller law firms, there's nowhere to hide. And if they swing and miss on a candidate only to find out 6 months later that that's not the right fit for their organization, they take a huge financial hit and a cultural hit. If you've got one or two bad people to work with within a smaller law firm, that permeates pretty quickly throughout that entire firm. Like I said, if you're at 1,000-person law firm, well, you're gonna have your A players, B players, and C players, and sometimes you could just put those C players in a room somewhere, or have them isolated somewhere. But that being said, I think as far as the smaller law firms, what they can do is, I always tell people to recommend meeting at different times of the day, breaking bread with people. I know that sounds kind of old fashioned, but having different people within the organization meet with them. I just a little anecdote here several years ago, but I had somebody who interviewed with a firm in South Florida that one of the people that they were interviewing with was a former associate of somebody they went to law school with. And when the partner left the room, they decided that they wanted to get really casual in that conversation. And the person, they've known them since law school, they were friends and everything else, but the person came back and said, they just, they didn't take this very seriously. And so sometimes you have different power levels within a law firm that they'll interview people. And how do they treat the administrative staff? If it's somebody who they interview differently with a partner at a law firm than they do an administrator, that tells you a lot, because let's face it, probably for a partner, there's nobody who has more value to them than their administrative assistant or paralegal. And if that person interviews and they decide, okay, well, I want to treat them differently or talk to them differently, or I can't believe they kind of give off that air of, I can't believe I'm talking to this person when, I should be talking to the managing partner of the firm and only that person. That tells you a lot about how that person respects and works with other people. So there's a lot of different things like that. It goes back to some old fashioned things like showing up and on time and having your cell phone, leaving that in the car. I've had plenty of times where people still answer calls and texts in the middle of an interview. So there's a lot of things like that, surprisingly, that you can glean from somebody as to how valuable they see the time of interviewing with a firm or not. And like I said, I think with smaller law firms, it's extremely important for them to have people meet the administrators, the paralegals, everybody that's within the firm and get a good gauge on who that person is. And you want that person to have a good gauge as to what that firm is important, because in smaller firms, it is a lot more collegial of an environment, and you are going to have get-togethers after work, and you start developing that secret sauce within a small law firm where people go to each other's kids' graduations and weddings and parties and those type of things. Those are things that's reasons why people want to go to a small law firm. And if small law firms or smaller law firms can paint that picture for attorneys, then it's very compelling. I think a lot of people want to be part of a community, and it's really tough to be part of a community with a 1,000, 2,000 person firm that doesn't make that a priority to have people enjoy the people that they work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears to retention for a moment, because we talked about getting somebody in the door, but what if you already have somebody on staff? One of the problems in the industry is this turnover that happens where, so you get somebody, they're in place, you get them fully trained, they're producing, and then they up and leave, right? And that can be very costly to the law firm because there's a lot of expense in the front end where they're not producing to the level that they need to be producing at. And then when they leave, it leaves a gaping hole, and it becomes very difficult for the people around them because now they have to carry that work until the next person's put in place, which could be a while, especially if you're following the guidelines that we just set out with, how to actually bring somebody on. That takes time to do those things properly. So what do you think the challenges are when it comes to retaining somebody, and how can law firms do a better job with that retention as they navigate the leadership role?
Well, let's face it, you're going to have a certain amount of attorneys that, especially at an age where if they get offered, say you got an associate that's making $130,000 or $140,000 a year, and a firm comes along and offers them another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. You know what? You're going to have a tough time bridging that gap. You're going to have a certain amount of people that walk, and that's part of either you're going to raise your rates. And you're going to pay associates higher than what you believe that you feel comfortable doing to maintain them. But that to me is a short-term fix, because at some point it's like back in 07 and 08, I guess more 08, when the bottom fell out. Those are the first folks to go, unfortunately. So the loyalty has to work both ways within a law firm. And let's face it, when the market goes south, the people who are costing the most to keep employed are probably the first ones to go. But in terms of the retention, if I had to boil it down to one key thing, it would be communication. When attorneys get calls from people like me that do what I do, the frustrations that I hear typically are business oriented. I try not to work with people who they're looking to make moves for dramatic reasons. In other words, I got to do a fight with my managing partner, or somebody here slammed the door, or there's a disagreement. I try to tell people, hey, if it's in a disagreement between somebody else and that you could work it out, then go work it out. If it's a business reason why you're looking to make a move, hey, you know what? My bill rate's too high. My bill rate's too low. I'm at a firm where they're not letting me generate my own clients. I want to be able to have the power to be able to do that. My firm's not investing in me. I really have a national platform or a national client base, but I don't have a national platform to leverage that with, or other practice areas to leverage that with. Well, those are business reasons why people want to make a move. And sometimes you can address those, and sometimes you can't. I had somebody several years ago who they interviewed with a firm for 2 months that I was working with them on. They got an offer, and they went back to their firm and said, I'm taking this other offer from another firm. And their firm said, well, we didn't, the main reason why they were commuting for an hour to the office. And the firm said, well, we don't want to lose you. If it means that we'll open up a small office for you down by where you live, we'll keep you. Well, that would have been a conversation they should have had from the very beginning, but they were almost afraid to. And the firm opened up a small office for them. They stayed with the firm. They were perfectly happy. Well, in the meantime, they've gone through and interviewed for 2 months, and they've created this whole other side drama and everything else, when they didn't necessarily need to do that. But if it comes down to one thing, I would say communication. Communicating what the values are of the firm, but really getting buy-in from everybody within the organization. If it's an associate that feels like they're not getting mentorship, then try to figure out how to become better mentors to them. If it's somebody that they want to develop their own practice, well, when they're associates, having them tie in with somebody who is a business generator or rainmaker, and not just, paying lip service to that, but really trying to bring them along and help them with their career. If it's something that I want to do more pro bono work or whatever, then let's figure a way for you to do some of that. Because one of the key issues in my experience with attorneys is dealing with mental health side of the practice of law. And if you're getting what you want out of your career at your law firm, there is a financial trade-off that people are willing to make if they're happy where they are. And the pain of making a move over to a large firm or to another firm just isn't worth it to them, because you know what? I'm working with really good people. They invest in me. They take the time with me. If I need anything, they enable me to have it. I work with good attorneys and just generally good character people. But when you leave people out of that communication, when they get calls from people like me, they'll answer them. Another one is succession planning. I have an attorney that I work with here in Florida that they've been with the same firm since they were law clerks. They were associates. Now they're partners. Love the people they work with. But the firm's getting a bit older, and they know that. All the partners are approaching 70 years old, and they said if there's a succession plan, they haven't told us what it is. And this is a partner that's been with this firm for probably 20 years. So you would think that that person would be the next generation of that firm. They would be mentored, and they would be able to move into a position of leadership But they don't know. I mean, somebody could walk in tomorrow and say, I don't want to practice law anymore. Or 3 people may end up leaving, or they want to become of counsel or whatever. And that attorney just says, yeah, you know what? I want to control my own destiny, not just leave this to the whims of somebody who isn't communicating what the values are and what the direction of the firm is.
Right. I'm wondering why, in that respect, that specific example, that person doesn't feel like they're empowered enough to be able to initiate that conversation. In other words, why do they have to sit around and wait and hope that that conversation is going to be had? I mean, clearly people who are in their 70s and running a law firm and not having this conversation are just in denial about where they are, what their stage is in life. So maybe they need to take the reins and run with it. So I'm curious about that dynamic, but you're absolutely right. The communication and being able to, it's not just the communication outbound, but it's the communication inbound, right? So giving your employees an opportunity to be heard and to really listen to them and understand what's important to them, because it's not all about the money.
And I've told associates this, and I've told partners this, is if you do anything for money, you'll never have enough of it. And you're talking about a practice that everybody thinks that attorneys are multimillionaires, and they see all the commercials and they align with, well, that person's flying this jet and that jet and everything else. There's a lot of attorneys who aren't doing that. They have their own shingle that they're hanging, and they're just waiting for stuff to come through the door, and they're good attorneys. That's just how they practice. But, the idea, and I've talked to several attorneys over the years, that I have to make $300,000, $400,000 just to keep the lights on and at home. And so they're in a position as well where they've got to make the same compensation just to be able to cover all of the rest of what they have created in their lives, rather than saying, I just want to do the work. And if I do good work with good people and I treat my clients well and everything else, that money will be there. I'll have a long-term career. I'll have fulfillment in that. But if you leave to go take another job for $15,000, $20,000, and then that at some point you'll spend up to that amount, and then you'll start spending, and then it becomes, okay, well, I need to go to another firm because I need to keep making more money. Listen, making money is fantastic. I'm a big fan of it, but and why I do, I want the attorneys I work with to make the most money they can for obvious reasons.
Right.
But I also caution people that, hey, if you go in and you want to squeeze a firm for every dime that you can make, and you want to put yourself in an awkward position, you also put a big target on your back. You better produce. You better do everything that you promised that you said you could do. Or you could go in and get what everybody else is getting, with the opportunity to grow and make more if you all meet your mutually agreed upon deliverables and all that. And you could practice someplace and do good work. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it all boils down to, understanding what people want. Because we said it's not all about the money, but what is it about? Well, some people want prestige. Some people want flexibility. Some people want time. Everyone has different things that they want, but if you're in tune to what your folks are looking for, like your example with the guy who just didn't want to commute an hour every day, if you had known that was the case, and I have a personal experience with that. I was working for a software company. I used to be in IT. I was working for a software company. They were pre-IPO. I was a catch for them. I was in their customer service department, and I was probably the lead customer service rep, and they could have, there was a lot of potential I had there, but I was commuting an hour to get there. And I got a job that was around the corner from me, and they, after the fact came to me and said, oh, if it's just about the commute, we can solve that. You can work remotely. We can, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is that it was a little bit too little, too late. but being in tune with what your people want, what their needs are, can really allow you to provide an environment for them where if somebody else comes to knock it and says, hey, you should come here, they'll be like, no, I'm taking care of where I am. I have all my needs met. They're doing exactly what I asked them to, or what I told them, shared with them that I wanted. And this is where, this is where I need to be. So,
and I think one of the unique differentiators to that point is the this hybrid or remote platform that it was funny. A couple of years ago, I was working with the firms that they kind of practice heavily in the remote space, working with law firms. And I do a lot of work with them still. But when I talked to people pre-COVID about that, it seemed like I was educating a lot of people on what that looks like and how that works. And well, that sounds interesting. That's probably where the practice of law is going. But I can't not work in an office, and I can never work from home, never until they had to. And now you have a lot of people that they want to work from home. And, or if I go to an office, I just want to go to an office 2-3 days a week. That idea of I need to be at the office, I need to put on my suit, drive into town, drive to a building, go up into a building to practice law from this time to this time. And then the additional pressure of some law firms, as old fashioned as it seems, they just want people to kind of hang around. And, people in my experience in the last couple of years have found different times of the day. They're working more hours, they're billing more hours. They're just working different times of the day. So that time that they were spending an hour commuting in and an hour commuting at the end of the day, I hear plenty of people say they get up at 3:00 in the morning, they knock out some emails, and then they go work out. They'll have breakfast with their family. They'll take their kids to school. They'll come back and they'll work a few more hours. And then, after dinner, they'll work a few more hours, as opposed to going to a building and doing that from, let's say, 8 till 6 o'clock or 7 or whatever. So they're just working different hours. And I think a lot of people have adjusted to that. A lot of people want to get back to an office. But I think the answer is somewhere in the middle of, I'd like to have an office for me to be able to meet up with my team 2-3 days a week or 1 day a week for us to strategize, see each other, enjoy each other's company and community. And then I want to be able to go back to what I do and then come back. And as long as I have the resources to be able to do that, I think people have found that new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you do staffing, but you also do consulting. What does that look like? Are there other aspects to this that we haven't covered besides for finding people and retaining them? Like, what are the other portions of what you do that we can dive into?
Right. Well, I do also client development consulting with law firms, and I guess to a certain degree business practice consulting. But on the client development side, my background prior to owning my business back in 2003 was I was your friendly neighborhood Westlaw rep, but I was in sales and sales methodology. And as people don't want to necessarily call it sales in the legal field, it's client development. But in my experience, you have people who've been in law school for the most part. You have people who've been in law school, they come out, they practice law, and they're really good attorneys, but they've never had to have a business conversation before. They've never had to engage with a prospective client or talk to a existing client and be able to walk them through a sales process. It's just a matter of, okay, well, the phone rings and we get business, and the practice group leader or whoever the partner is I'm working with just divvies out the work, and somehow every year the numbers always get met. Well, that's interesting. And when you talk to attorneys that what I call unconscious competence, that every year there's just a book of business that keeps flowing in. If you had them really break down how they developed that client base, could be kind of an institutional client base for them now, 5, 10, 15-year clients or longer. But somewhere along the way, they had to have a business conversation with somebody at a company or an organization that walked them through what it is that they were not achieving or what they needed or where their risk was or something, how they're able to transact business in some way that required the services of an attorney. And, oh, by the way, I happen to be an attorney and let me do work for you. Well, there's more to it than that. So walking them through, engaging with them and asking questions of potential clients and really finding out what their overall goals are and getting all of those out and trying to identify not just, okay, well, how could I do your legal work in this narrow area, but let me understand your entire organization so that, yes, I could handle that. But if there's an issue that comes from outside of this, maybe I know somebody that can help you with that problem too. And fundamentally, I want to be able to help people solve their problems. And if I'm working with a company on their commercial real estate needs, but I know that they also have a liability matter or a tax matter or labor and employment matter that I could help them address, and I can put the right people in touch with them to be able to help them address that. Well, that's part of sales. That's client development. And in my experience working with associates, firms are in that weird balance of, we want to be able to grow our associates. We want to make them partners someday, and those partners have to generate business. They're good associates, but how do we teach them the skills for them to be able to learn to develop that business? Or if they're partners, how do we get somebody who's a partner that has $250,000 or $500,000 in quote unquote business to get up to $1 million or $1.5 million or $2 million, and leveraging some of the internal processes they have, the other practice areas that they have, and frankly, some of the advantages that firm has that they sell themselves on, their bullet points that they sell themselves on. What good is it to have 2,000 attorneys and 27 offices and all these practice areas if you don't know how to be able to take the information that potential clients have and what their issues are, and be able to plug the people in from your firm and all of those resources to help those clients satisfy those needs and solve those problems.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all really interesting, and highlighting the different challenges when it comes to leadership, staffing, and all of that has just been really eye-opening. It's just it's something that we don't focus on enough, and it's like the hidden thing that it's beneath the surface. We can monitor numbers. We can see how much revenue is coming in. We can see how much, the expenses are going out, but it's hard to put a price tag or tie a dollar amount to somebody who's a good fit, to somebody who's really, helping make things cook versus somebody who's really dragging on the firm. And it's an interesting challenge to be in the role of the leader, to recognize who your A players are and who are the boat anchors in your firm. Do you have any sort of tools, tips, tricks for somebody to be able to gauge that as they're traversing through the years, and they've got people on staff who are there? How do you measure productivity? How do you determine whether somebody is operating at their best? Or I think a lot of people are just sitting in the dark. I think that they're doing their job, but they're not really clear on what that is.
Well, and unfortunately or unfortunately, when you are in the practice of law, your productivity is measured in 6-minute increments, right? So if you're billing a lot and you're collecting a lot, then for the most part, firms are pretty happy. And I think some of it, you're able to measure what your receivables are, what your actual receivables are. If you're collecting a lot, and without getting too much in the weeds, but if you're collecting most of what you're billing out, for the most part, I would say your clients are happy. Well, then that indicates that if your clients are happy and the people are billing and they're doing a good job for you as a firm, then that's mostly what firms want. And now the other side of that is, and I talk to plenty of firms that will tell me, I don't care if a person has a $10 million book of business. If they're a bad person, or I'll leave it at that. What they tell me what their quote unquote policy is, in terms of the type of person they don't want. Because all it takes is a person like that can come in and they become a cancer in the clubhouse, and a group will leave, or another partner will leave, or it just becomes so dramatic within that firm that you could see 100-person firm break off into splinters, and people start having closed door meetings, and then you start losing some real good people and real good groups because of this now acquisition, or this one person or this small group that's come in. And that's at the practice group leader. There are some firms that they have a fantastic reputation, but even the leadership of the firm knows that it's darn near impossible to recruit for a certain office because the managing partner of that office may be one of the best in their field, but they're a tyrant to work with. Or a practice group leader that, boy, I'd love to work with that firm, but that practice group leader is notorious for calling people at 3 o'clock in the morning and chewing them out and treating them very unprofessionally. And that practice group leader has a, 8-figure book of business, but nobody wants to work with them. So it's a trade-off for some of those firms. They could isolate some of those folks, but that becomes increasingly difficult. In my experience, you have to, if I could borrow an NFL term here, you have to protect the shield.
Right.
And that sometimes is at the detriment of having really good attorneys work with you. But once you know what your culture is, and firms that actually spend a lot of time identifying what their values and their culture are, you just have to make an understanding or have an understanding that that's not going to be deviated from. And that includes people that are there already. That includes the type of people that would be coming in. If they do not fit you culturally, and you could run them through the interview process, you could try to speak with other people, even though you're not supposed to call other employees and all that kind of stuff. A lot of these firms, they know the reputation on some of these attorneys, probably better than the Secret Service would know the background on people and all that. But you develop a reputation pretty quick as an attorney that is good to work with or not good to work with. And let there be no mistake. Those people are well known within communities, and you have law firms that just kind of stay away because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. Unfortunately, we're at the tail end of our time together. What I'd like to do is when we close out an interview is to give you an opportunity to leave like one lasting piece of advice for our listeners. And I'd like to give you that opportunity to do that. In addition, if you can share with us how somebody can get in touch with you, take the next step with you, or otherwise, pick your brain, I guess, to effectuate change in their firm, what would they do?
Well, if I could leave one thing, and it's something that I'm a bit passionate about, and if I could have a shameless plug here, is I just published my second novel, which is called Walkabout. And some of the things that I talk about in the book it's frankly kind of pulled from conversations I've had with attorneys over the years about mental health. If I had one piece of advice that I'd like to be able to share with people that are out there is just take care of yourselves. If you do good work, everybody needs to make money. Everybody's got the stresses. Everybody's got the needs that you have to satisfy by doing your work. But you could do your work only effectively if you're taking care of yourself and taking care of your health mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And you will benefit your family, you'll benefit the people that you work with, but more importantly, you benefit yourself. And however you need to get yourself into that mindset and prioritize that, that is the most important thing that I would say that people have to do. And if that means that you're at a large law firm and you're getting burned out, but you're making a lot of money, you love practicing law, but you need to take a pay cut to go work somewhere else, figure it out. If you need to get away for 2 weeks and figure out, what you want to do and have some time just to walk out into the woods and, kind of come back with a plan, then do that. But take care of yourself. And it seems like the rest of it somewhat takes care of itself.
Yeah, very, very interesting that you're an author of novels. That's we didn't get into that at all. Whole nother topic for another day. But yeah, folks, go buy the book and take a read, and so if you like it, get the other 3 novels. How does somebody get in touch with you and do the next take the next step with you if they're interested in having a conversation?
Sure thing. My website is wilcox-legal.com. You could reach me at andrew@wilcox-legal.com, or you can call me at 850-274-7849. You could also find me on LinkedIn and I'm easily findable on the Google as well.
Awesome. Andrew, I really appreciate your time today. I enjoyed the conversation. It's something that needs to be talked about. It's well needed. And hopefully it was valuable to folks here. Folks, if this is your first time listening to the podcast and you enjoyed this conversation, you're definitely going to enjoy a ton of other conversations we've had and a ton that we're going to have. Our interviews with guests are released on Thursdays. And you can go back, we're well into 300 past episodes. So there's a lot of great material here for you to binge on. And also you want to know the next time that we release a new episode. So make sure to hit that subscribe button in your podcast player so you're coming back and tuning in to us every week as we produce this content for you. And just take the next step, whatever it is. One of the things that often we tend to do is we're afraid to take the next step because of what might happen. And I talk about this a lot. We can have additional podcast conversations around it, but all of these conversations that we're having with experts, Andrew included, it gives you information we want to help you navigate to a decision. We want to help you take action. Sometimes when we give you information, it creates more of that, I don't know what's going to happen effect, and therefore creates new fear for you to take the next step. Better to hire somebody and learn from the experience and have it be the wrong person and then hire the next one, do a better job, than to not hire somebody in the first place and never be taking a step in that direction that you need to go. So better to have a conversation with your people and have that open line of communication and find out what they need, even if it means that you're not ready to give it to them, than to not have that conversation and have them leave eventually because you didn't care enough about them to find out what they needed. So everything we discussed today is very relevant, but you actually need to take action on it. You actually need to do something with it. And if I can encourage you to do one thing today, is take action on that. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to us. We'll be back next Tuesday with a solo episode from me and Thursday with another amazing guest interview. Until then, let's just make our journey profitable. Take care.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.